morning and welcome to another Fast Tracks webinar. This is a weekly event we do every Friday at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, where we go over various topics of the Fast Track software. You can see a list of these events if you go to our website, go FTx.com, choose the FTx Lifeline button, scroll down just a bit and look for that webinar button. Choose that and that'll show you a list of all of our previous webinars, where you can view the recordings by choosing that View Recording button, all of our upcoming webinars that you can register to be reminded for by choosing the Register button, and sign up for our newsletter to be notified of upcoming webinars and other Fast Tracks news. Today we're going to be going over a feature that's been touched on in the past. It has to do with electronic retail returns to the warehouse. This is specifically going to be targeting people that utilize both the retail software, Director, POS, and also utilize the warehouse software for the wholesale environment. So first and foremost, we have to look at the settings that are required to enable this feature. So I'm going to go to Director here, and we're going to go to our settings hyperlink. And we want to look at the setting that's going to be required to enable this particular feature for the Director side. So first, we're going to look at the setup hyperlink here. This will be enabled once you have this Enable Return Worksheets checked as true. We'll choose that. And for this particular webinar, we're going to be focusing on the Enable Return to Warehouse. Now above, there's the option to allow discounting and allow level-based discounting. If you're interested in that, that's a feature that allows you to discount returned items to the register, have corporate approve those items for their discount value, and then send that back down to the store. And then the store, utilizing a special button, can sell those returned items at a lower retail price. This could be used for like damaged product or product that's missing packaging or things like that. Things that are not necessarily returned to the warehouse side. So I've got the Enable Return to Warehouse set to true. And then we have to choose our vendor we want to target. In this case, the demo vendor number 1 for today is going to be in our case, the warehouse vendor, the vendor that's running the warehouse software. So next, we want to enable the settings in the POS. So in the POS area, I've already logged in. I'm going to go to my Actions, Settings, and under Register Settings, we have the same option here, Enable Return Worksheets. We want to make sure this is turned on. And we want to go to the Setup option. And we have a couple more options here in the POS because this is where the return is going to be actually done. So the allow discounting, that's the same as it was in Director, and you have the allow discount levels for different percentages off. We're going to be looking at the Enable Return to Warehouse, this setting here, and then Enable Warehouse Approval. We want those set to true, and we want to target the same vendor that we targeted in Director. Now there's a couple other options up here. There's the force scanning, there's the require verification, there's the append duplicate items on the same worksheet, and then enable convert to invoice and convert to order. What force scanning will do is if that's set to true, whenever you're actually managing the worksheet itself in POS, if you're going to add an item manually outside of a transaction to that worksheet to be returned to the warehouse, it requires you to force scanning that item. You can't manually look that item up. Require verification, that's going to require manager verification on that particular worksheet. Append duplicate items on the same worksheet. What that will do is if you have 2 of the same items that are returned, that's going to be returned to the warehouse, instead of having those as separate line items, it's going to roll those up to 1. And then at the end of the return process, you can enable the convert to invoice and convert to order. What that will do is exactly that. Whenever you convert it to an invoice, it will convert that worksheet to in this case, a negative or credit invoice, or convert it to an order. We're going to be targeting an order today because that's what would be needed in order to do this process for the return to the warehouse side. So I've got all my settings turned on here in the POS. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. And then we're going to look at the warehouse settings. So we're going to go to the maintenance module in warehouse. We're going to go to the settings area. We're going to go to our order and invoice settings. We first want to make sure that we have a particular setting on that's going to make things look a little bit cleaner in our order list. We want to have the separate return orders set to true. Instead, what that will do is in your order listing, your monitor orders, instead of having all the orders, both credit and regular orders in one list, it will allow that to be separated to where you can quickly and easily filter out what's a regular order versus what's a return order from a store. And then under the other settings, we want to make sure that we have the enable return worksheets enabled. That's very, very important to have enabled. And what that will do is that will enable in the dashboard area, the return worksheets module. So that's the settings we have in both Director, POS, and Warehouse. So let's look at a transaction and do a return. I'm going to open POS up here. And we're going to be targeting this item first. A Winston carton. Now notice this particular vendor part that's set from that demo vendor number 1, what's marked as the warehouse vendor. And whenever I look at that same item in the warehouse side, that will exist. Just in basic terms, the vendor part on the item itself is going to be the item number for the particular item in warehouse. So let's go to the POS here. Let's go ahead and log in. And we're going to do a return. I'm going to return that one item. Cash that out. And then notice we have a screen that pops up here. I can return this item to inventory. That's your regular return that's always functions the same, where that item is sellable, gets returned and added back to inventory. There's the option that this item is unsellable, and there's your discount level. And like I said earlier, that's a feature that can be turned on or disabled. If you want more detail on that particular feature and on discounting and how corporate can approve that and how the button's set up, I recommend you watch that particular webinar. For this webinar, we're going to look at the return to warehouse. Now we can see there's that item number. We can see there's the warehouse vendor. I can't change that because it's assigned. We have reasons we can choose for what that's being returned as. Those are pre-set up in that return in the POS. When you have the enable return worksheets checked in the setup, you can predetermine these notes field. You can set up as many as you need. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark this as unsellable and then hit OK. This will add that item as a return item to a worksheet. Now, whenever we go to our actions inventory, we now have a worksheets button. And then there's that particular worksheet. So whenever I view this worksheet, we can see all the details of that particular return. The UPC, the vendor part number, the number of units in that particular vendor part, the description, the quantity that's being returned, 1. If I had that setting, if I returned 2 of those and I had the setting to append items together, that would be 2 if I returned a second one. We can see it's a full unit. So that means in this case, it's the full vendor part. In this case, it's a carton being returned, so it's the full vendor part. If I was returning a pack, that would be a piece. Any notes we've assigned to that we selected, we'll see the notes here. This is very important. We can see that it's from the POS. So anytime that an item has been added to the worksheet outside of an actual return action in the POS, that checkbox for from POS will be set to false. This lets the warehouse know and managers on the retail side know that if an item is being returned, was it truly a customer return from the POS, or was it a return that's being added manually to this worksheet? If there's a restocking fee on that, we'll see that restocking fee, and then if this item can be credited back to the store from the warehouse, true or false. These will be populated whenever we see this back from the warehouse. So I'm happy with how this looks. I want to go ahead and I want to send this to the warehouse. So I'm going to choose the send button. I'm going to get the confirmation that it was sent. And then that worksheet's now gone. So what we're going to see now is on the warehouse side, whenever we go to the dashboard in our return worksheets and we refresh this screen, we're going to see there's that particular worksheet that's pending. So whenever I view this worksheet, I can see all the details that the POS saw, except on the warehouse side. I can see the item, the description, and all the details. Was it from the POS? If there's a restocking fee, can the store credit that? I can change these values. I can say there's not going to be a restocking fee, or I can change that restocking fee. By default, it's going to put whatever you have on that product line. You can change that to, can the store receive credit for that item or can they not? So for this item, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to approve that worksheet. That will then remove that worksheet here from the warehouse side, and it's gone back to the store level. So on the store side, I'm going to refresh that screen. It auto refreshes every 5 minutes just to save time. I'm going to go ahead and refresh that. When I go to my actions, inventory, and worksheets, we'll see that I now have an open worksheet again. This lets me know that I've received a worksheet from the warehouse. Whenever I view this, I can see any details that the warehouse has updated. So I can see that they're charging a restocking fee on this item to me, and that I will indeed receive credit. So whatever I purchase this item for, there's going to be a 10% restocking fee taking off of that. Whenever I'm ready to send this to the warehouse side, I can choose the convert to order. Notice the send button is now gone. It's grayed out. I can't use it. So I can convert this to an order because I want this to be sent electronically to the warehouse. I'll choose yes. There's my purchase order number. When I choose close, I'm immediately going to get the option to send EDI directly from the point of sale. Now, for this particular store, I've got the EDI already set up. For information on setting up EDI, I'd recommend you watch that particular webinar. I'm going to choose the Send EDI button. That's going to send that order electronically to the warehouse. Back on the warehouse side, I can then go to my inventory module, and under my orders, since I've turned that setting on to true to filter out regular orders and return orders, notice there's an option here that I can filter quickly between these two. Now, since I sent this electronically, I need to go to my order monitoring and I need to look for that. So there's my regular orders that are ready to be processed. Notice I have the returns option here. There's that particular POI that I just sent to the warehouse. I can select that. I can process that file. And then whenever I go back to my orders and my return orders and I refresh that, I'm going to have an order that's now a return order. I can open this up and then I can do with it as I need to do. Can apply this to update inventory levels and credit the store back. And then once I fill this order, I can send this order back to the store electronically, just like a regular EDI order could be done from the warehouse, and then receive that as an electronic invoice on the store side. For information on receiving electronic invoices on the store side, I'd suggest you watch that particular webinar. So let's take a look at another item here. Let's do another one of these return worksheets, but this time let's do it with a particular item that, let's say we want to return a piece, a pack, an item that in this case wouldn't be associated to a vendor part, but is associated to a parent item, a purchase unit that does have a vendor part. So let's close this out. Let's go to director here. Let's take a look at this item here. And we have a perfect. So we don't have a vendor part on the child item. So this item, we have the 011395 as the vendor part that's associated to the warehouse. Let's make sure that it exists in the warehouse. And we have that. So we want to look at the item packages. Notice there's nothing here. That's because there are no partial packages assigned to this item. If you're curious on what packages are, I'd suggest you watch that particular webinar. This will allow you to basically assign different UPC levels to your items in warehouse if you receive partials, for instance, like we're going to do here. Now, in this case, we want to electronically create this automatically. We don't want to have to manually go in here and add the pack to this particular item. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our POS, and we're going to return both the carton and the pack. So I'm going to do an item return. We'll do the carton first. I'm going to choose return to warehouse. We'll make this marked as unsellable. Notice the partial is not checked. because this is a full unit, it's a carton. And we'll do another return. We'll do its child, the pack. Notice there's that same vendor part, but it's checked as a partial. I can choose other here. I'm going to leave this as sellable. Mark that as okay. Now we're going to go to our actions and inventory and worksheets and view that particular worksheet. So here we have both of those items. We can see the carton, it's a full. We can see the piece, pack. So it's going to let us know both those differences that I had selected. It's letting us know that this is going to be a piece of that full vendor part. That's the full. Notice we have the different line notes. And let's say that I want to add a manual item here. Let's just do that Winston. And we'll choose save. Now notice too that this Winston I just added, it's not from the POS. That's going to signify to the warehouse and managers that this item was added manually to the worksheet and it was not done via the POS. So let's say that I'm done now. I'll choose the send button. That will send that worksheet to the warehouse side. I'll go to my dashboard and return worksheets on the warehouse side. And I'll refresh the screen. We'll view that. There's those three items. Notice that that pack is now set to a partial, just like it was in the POS, letting us know that this item is not going to be the full item on in the warehouse. So pack is going to be a partial item. So let's say that I'm going to change everything except I'm going to change the restocking fee to $0 here on this one. And for this one, I'm going to choose you can't credit that. So I'll approve that. That's going to send that back down to the point of sale. The point of sale, I will log out and log in just to refresh our module to get that updated worksheet. Notice on that pack, I've got the restocking fee now set to 0. That's because I changed that at the warehouse side. On the Marlboro carton, I've got that where this item is not going to be credited. So the store knows exactly what's going to be happening. And then notice the part number on the Marlboro pack, there's now a underscore EA1. So it's got a different part than it did before. So I'll show you what that does in just a second. So I'm going to convert this to an order. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send that EDI to the warehouse. And we're going to go ahead and close the POS. On the warehouse side, I'm going to go to my inventory. I'm going to go to my order monitoring and look for that particular order. I'm going to process that particular electronic order. I'm going to go back to my regular orders, refresh this. There we go. And we can see those items here are now in place. Now, notice the pack now has the same underscore EA1 on the warehouse side. We can see there's the negative quantities. We can see that the particular cost is going to be 1/10 of what it was, of what the actual parent unit was, what the true item is in warehouse. And then on the warehouse side, notice the cost of that parent is $0. Why is that? That's because we chose on the warehouse side, when we sent the worksheet back down to the POS, that this item can't be credited. So it remembers and it knows that that particular item the store is not going to receive credit for. They can return it, but they're not going to receive credit. So let's take a look at the item itself in both POS and warehouse. So I'm going to look at that carton back up. And we're going to go to the subunit. And then notice there's a vendor part now created automatically on the retail side that has the same vendor part as the parent item, but an underscore EA1. Now let's take a look at that item in detail, because that could potentially pose a problem if we're doing automated ordering. So it is 011395. 395. we can see there's the EA1. If we look, this is the item that was automatically created via that process, and it's automatically marked as do not order. So when you're doing automated ordering, it's going to skip this item and look to just the parent item, continue rolling the pack up to the carton. So there would be no problem at all. What it's going to do is it's going to create this vendor part automatically for the child item so that it can be returned at this store and other stores that may have that return process. So anytime that you have a partial item that's being returned on the retail side to the warehouse side via this process, you can expect that a vendor part that's marked as do not order will be created for future returns. Now let's take a look at the warehouse side. 011395 is the item. There's that carton. Whenever we go to our item packages here, notice that there's a package that's created that wasn't there before. And it's going to be that same pack vendor part number that was created on the retail side. So it's saving you the trouble of having to create a vendor part for returns on the retail side and the warehouse side. It does all that automatically via the EDI process. So that's how the warehouse and retail integrate together whenever you're automating this return process. You can have the stores receive returns, flag those returns to go to the warehouse via the worksheet process and the POS, send that to the warehouse electronically. The warehouse can then view those worksheets and those items, make any changes as necessary, flag items appropriately, send that back to the store. The store can review those changes, box those items up, send that order electronically back to the warehouse. The warehouse can then process that order, use their scanners or manually fill those automatically, and then credit the store if the store needs to be credited. So I hope everybody learned something new today. Once again, you can see a list of all these webinars if you go to our website, goftx.com, choose the FTX Lifeline page, scroll down just a bit and look for the webinar button. That webinar button would carry to the webinar page. It shows you all of our previous webinars where you can view the recordings, see upcoming webinars to register for, and sign up for the newsletter. If you have any questions on this topic, let us know at websupport@FTxPOS.com. And if you have any suggestions for future webinar topics, let us know at info@goftx.com. Thank you and have a great weekend.